I'm in love with someone else, Julian, and I don't care what you think, Nora said, holding a wine glass with a lipstick stain on it. I smiled and replied quietly. Her face turned pale when she realized that I knew everything. Julian pushed through the glass door of his Miami apartment building, the weight of a 10-hour workday dragging at his shoulders. He'd stayed late to finish a client's logo, tweaking every curve until it was perfect because that's who he was, someone who cared about getting it right. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a text from his coworker. Hope Nora's got something special planned for your birthday. He smiled faintly, picturing a quiet dinner, maybe the Cuban place they loved in Coral Gables. But as he climbed the stairs, a flicker of unease hit him. The hallway was too quiet, the air sharp with something burnt, maybe from a neighbor's kitchen. His apartment door was ajar. Not wide open, just a crack, enough to make his pulse quicken. He nudged it open with his foot. Inside, the living room was dim, lit only by a single lamp that hummed faintly. 2 wine glasses sat on the dining table, one with a faint smudge of coral lipstick, the other still damp with condensation. Julian's stomach twisted. Nora was by the window, her back to him, scrolling through her phone with a focus that felt deliberate, like she was avoiding the room. He dropped his keys onto the counter, the clink louder than intended. She didn't turn. He stood there, waiting, the silence stretching like a taut wire. Finally, he spoke, voice flat but steady. Did you forget what today is? Nora's shoulders stiffened, but she didn't look up. God, Julian, do you ever stop? She said, her tone sharp, each word deliberate. It's always about you. It's exhausting. The words landed like a slap, not loud but precise, cutting deeper because of their calm delivery. Julian froze, his chest tightening, not with anger, but with the sudden awareness that he was standing in a stranger space. He scanned the room again. Her green coat, the one she'd sworn she'd donated months ago, draped over a chair. His eyes locked on the second glass, the one without lipstick. The chair beside it was slightly askew, as if someone had just stood up. He took a step closer, his voice low. Who was here, Nora? She finally turned, her eyes narrowing, but they darted to the chair for a split second before returning to him. You're being ridiculous, she said, scoffing, but her fingers gripped her phone tighter. Julian didn't move. He noticed the faint scent of cologne, not his, not hers, lingering in the air. His gaze fell on the chair again. He reached out, touching the seat. It was warm, not from sunlight or a radiator, but from a body that had been there minutes ago. His throat tightened. How long was he here? He asked, his voice colder now, each word challenge. Nora's scoff turned into a nervous laugh. You're spiraling again, Julian. Nothing happened. But her eyes betrayed her, flickering with something close to panic. She took a step toward him, her posture shifting to something softer, rehearsed. I love you. You know that. Let's not do this on your birthday. The words felt hollow, like lines from a script she'd practiced too many times. Julian's gaze drifted back to the table. 2 glasses, 1 stain. The math wasn't adding up. He didn't respond, letting the silence press against her. She shifted her weight, her fingers twitching toward her coat. I'm not imagining this, he said, his voice steady but laced with a quiet fury. You changed the sheets this morning. Not for me. Her lips parted, but no words came. He walked past her to the bedroom, his steps deliberate. The bed was pristine, corners tucked with military precision. But on the nightstand, 2 water bottles sat, one half empty, a small towel crumpled beside it. The details didn't scream, but they whispered betrayal. He turned back to find Nora in the doorway, her arms crossed, her expression a mix of defiance and fear. You're making this bigger than it is, she said, her voice wavering. Julian didn't answer. He returned to the living room, his eyes catching on her phone, left carelessly on the counter. His fingers hesitated above it. He'd never snooped before. She'd always said trust was their foundation. But foundations crack. He picked it up. The screen was still lit, a calendar notification glaring. Julian's birthday. Below it, a text thread with Chris. He opened it. The first message hit like a punch. He thinks you're at your sister's again. Poor guy. Tell him happy birthday from me. Julian's breath caught. He scrolled. Messages about hotel meetups, jokes about his cluelessness, a photo of Nora in that green coat, her arms around a man he didn't know but instantly hated. His hands shook, not from sadness but from clarity. He looked up. Nora was watching him, her face pale. You went through my phone, she said, her voice low. accusing. Julian laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even him. You built a second life behind my back, and you're mad. I found the evidence. She didn't respond. He held up the phone, showing the photo. Who's Chris? Her eyes widened, but she didn't answer. Your trainer, he said, piecing it together. The one I paid for because you wanted to better yourself. Her silence was louder than any confession. Julian set the phone down, his movements slow, deliberate. How long have you been cheating? He asked, his voice devoid of emotion. Nora's lips trembled, but she didn't deny it. It didn't mean anything, she said finally, her voice small. He was a distraction. The word hung in the air, sharp and final. 11 years of marriage, reduced to static she needed to drown out. Julian didn't yell. He didn't break. He just nodded, as if thanking her for the truth. Then he walked to the bathroom, closing the door quietly behind him. The cold tile against his back felt like the only solid thing left. Outside, he heard her pacing, probably calculating her next move. He didn't care. Not anymore. Julian sat on the bathroom floor, the cold tile grounding him as his mind raced. Nora's pacing outside stopped, replaced by the faint tap of her texting. He knew she was crafting an excuse, maybe to Chris, maybe to herself. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a client email, irrelevant now. He ignored it and opened their joint banking app instead. His thumb hovered over the login, dread pooling in his gut. He typed the password. The screen loaded, revealing a transaction history that made his breath hitch. A $8,000 withdrawal, labeled training expenses, dated 3 days ago. The destination, a spa resort in Key Biscayne. Not a gym, not a business expense. A couple's package. He stood, his legs unsteady, and opened the bathroom door. Nora was on the couch, phone in hand, typing furiously. She looked up, startled, and slid the phone under a cushion. We need to talk, she said, her voice softer now, calculated. Julian didn't sit. He held up his phone, the banking app still open. You used our savings for a getaway with him. Her eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. It was a mistake, she said. I was stressed. I needed a break. Julian's jaw tightened. You booked a couple's package. You used my name to cover it. Nora stood, stepping toward him, her hands raised like she could calm a storm. It wasn't like that. I was going to tell you. Julian cut her off, his voice low but sharp. You forged my signature on the withdrawal. Her mouth opened, then closed. She turned away, grabbing her coat from the chair, as if movement could dodge the truth. Julian didn't follow. He opened the banking app again, digging deeper. Another transfer caught his eye. $2,000 to an account he didn't recognize, opened in his name. His heart pounded. She wasn't just cheating. She was setting him up to take the fall. He dialed a number he hadn't called in years. His old college friend, Marcus, now a lawyer in Miami. It was late, but Marcus picked up on the second ring. Julian, you okay? Julian kept his voice steady. I need advice. My wife's been moving money behind my back. Forged documents. I think she's planning to leave me liable. Marcus didn't hesitate. Lock your accounts now. I'll meet you tomorrow with paperwork to protect yourself. Julian hung up and opened his laptop, logging into their bank portal. He froze their joint account access with a few clicks, his fingers trembling but precise. Nora reappeared, her coat now on, keys in hand. I'm going to my sister's, she said, avoiding his eyes. We'll talk when you're calm. Julian didn't look up from the laptop. I know about the second account, he said. She froze mid-step. What account? Her voice was too high, too quick. He turned the screen toward her, showing the transfer. The one you opened with my social security number. Her keys slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. She didn't pick them up. You're wrong, she said, but her voice cracked, betraying her. Julian stood, closing the laptop. I called Marcus. He's a lawyer. We're meeting tomorrow. Nora's eyes darted to the door, then back to him. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said, stepping closer, her tone shifting to pleading. I was scared, okay? I didn't know how to tell you. I was unhappy. Julian didn't flinch. You weren't scared. You were planning. He walked past her to the kitchen, grabbing a notepad. He started writing. Cancel joint account. Call landlord. Secure credit. Each word was a step toward reclaiming control. Nora followed, her voice rising. You can't just shut me out like this. Julian kept writing. You shut me out first. He tore off the list and slipped it into his pocket. Then he grabbed his backpack, tossing in his laptop, passport, and a photo of his niece's birthday card, the one thing in the apartment that still felt like his. Nora grabbed his arm. Don't do this, Julian. We can fix it. He pulled away, his voice cold. You fixed it for both of us already. He walked to the door, pausing only to glance at the wine glasses on the table. Tell Chris happy birthday from me, he said, and stepped into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind him, the sound final. He didn't look back. Downstairs, the Miami night was humid, streetlights casting long shadows. His phone buzzed, Nora, already calling. He silenced it and kept walking, heading toward a 24-hour diner he used to visit during late-night study sessions. The neon sign flickered, welcoming him like an old friend. Inside, he slid into a booth and ordered black coffee. The waitress, a woman with kind eyes, didn't ask why he looked like he'd aged a decade in a day. He opened his phone again, this time to Chris's number, copied from Nora's texts. His thumb hovered over the call button. He didn't know what he'd say, but he needed answers she wouldn't give. He hit call. It rang 3 times before a low voice answered. Hello. Julian didn't hesitate. You've been sleeping with my wife. Silence stretched, then a sigh. I was wondering when you'd call, Chris said, calm, almost resigned. She told me you two were done, just sharing the apartment for convenience. Julian's grip tightened on the phone. She lied to you too. Chris didn't argue. It started as a fling. Got messy. I ended it last week. Julian's jaw clenched. You knew she was married. Another pause. Yeah, I did. The honesty stung, but it was better than Nora's deflections. Julian hung up without another word, the diner's hum filling the void. His coffee arrived, steam curling upward. He stared at it, piecing together the timeline. Late gym sessions, sudden work trips, Nora's insistence that he was paranoid. It wasn't paranoia. It was survival. His phone lit up again. Nora, texting now. Please come home. I didn't mean it. He didn't reply. Instead, he opened the banking app again, checking for more damage. Another transaction appeared, time-stamped an hour ago, a failed attempt to transfer $1,000. She tried to move money after he left. His blood ran cold. She wasn't just running from him. She was running from consequences. He texted Marcus. She's still trying to access the account. Meet me at 8 a.m. Marcus replied instantly. Got you. Stay sharp. Julian leaned back in the booth, the weight of betrayal settling into something else, resolve. He wasn't the man who'd walked into that apartment hours ago, hoping for a birthday dinner. He was someone new, someone who saw the truth and refused to be its victim. The diner clock read 2:17 a.m. He had 6 hours until his meeting with Marcus. 6 hours to plan his next move. He pulled out the notepad again, adding one more line, protect myself. The words felt like armor, and he was ready to wear it. Julian woke to the buzz of his phone against the diner's vinyl booth, the screen glowing with 17 missed calls from Nora. He'd dozed off for an hour, his coffee cold and untouched. The clock read 5:43 a.m. He silenced the phone and opened his email, finding a confirmation from the bank. The joint account was now frozen, pending review. A small victory, but enough to steady his hands. He paid for the coffee and stepped into the Miami dawn, the air thick with humidity. His next stop was a YMCA a few blocks away, where he'd once swam laps to clear his mind. He needed a shower, a locker, and a place to think. At the YMCA, he stuffed his backpack into a locker and checked his phone again. A new text from Nora. I'm sorry. Come home. We can fix this. He deleted it without replying. Under the hot shower, he let the water drown out the noise in his head. He wasn't going back. Not yet. Not until he had answers. As he dried off, his phone rang. Not Nora, but an unknown number. He answered cautiously. Julian? It's Elaine, Nora's mother. Her voice was tight, urgent. I need to see you. Now. I'm at the Starbucks on Lincoln Road. He arrived 20 minutes later, spotting Elaine at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a coffee she wasn't drinking. She looked up as he approached, her posture rigid, her eyes avoiding his. Sit, she said, pushing a manila envelope across the table. Julian didn't touch it. What's this? He asked, his voice low but firm. Elaine leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Proof Nora's been planning to leave you for months. She used your name to open a separate account. Transferred thousands. She's got a flight booked to New Mexico tomorrow. Julian's chest tightened, but he kept his face neutral. He opened the envelope, pulling out bank statements. Pages of transactions stared back at him. $12,000 moved over 6 months, all under his social security number. A forged consent form bore his signature, meticulous but not his. He flipped to the last page. A reservation confirmation for a one-way flight. Nora's name. Tomorrow at 6 a.m. His jaw clenched. She wanted me to take the fall, he said, more to himself than Elaine. She nodded, her voice breaking. She called me last night, panicking. Said you left. She thought you'd stay, beg, break down. Not walk away. He slid the papers back into the envelope, his mind racing. Why are you telling me this? Elaine's hands trembled as she set down her coffee. You don't deserve what she's done. I raised her better, but she's my daughter. I can't fix her, but I can warn you. Julian leaned back, processing. This wasn't just an affair. Nora had built an exit strategy, weaponizing his trust to erase him financially and legally. He stood, tucking the envelope under his arm. Thank you, he said, and walked out, his steps purposeful. At a nearby internet cafe, he borrowed a laptop and logged into the airline's website, using Nora's confirmation number from the statement. He canceled her flight with a few clicks, the screen confirming. Reservation terminated. Next, he called the bank, reporting the forged account as fraud. The representative promised an investigation, locking the account immediately. His phone buzzed, Nora again, a voicemail this time. He didn't listen. Instead, he texted Marcus, meet me at your office. Got proof of fraud. Marcus replied, 8 Uhr morgens sharp. Bring everything. Julian arrived at Marcus's law firm in downtown Miami, the envelope heavy in his hand. Marcus, a sharp-eyed man in his 30s, waved him into a small office. Show me, he said, wasting no time. Julian spread the bank statements across the desk, pointing to the forged signature and transfers. Marcus scanned them, his expression darkening. This is identity theft, Julian. She could face jail time. Julian nodded, his voice steady. I don't want revenge. I want protection. Marcus pulled out a stack of forms, separation agreement, credit freeze, fraud affidavit. Sign these. We'll file today and notify the bank to clear your name. As Julian signed, his phone lit up with another text from Nora. Why won't you answer? I'm losing my mind. He ignored it, focusing on the pen in his hand. Each signature felt like cutting a thread, tying him to her. Marcus leaned forward. You need to confront her, but on your terms. Get her to admit something on record. It'll help if she tries to spin this. Julian nodded, an idea forming. He opened his phone and typed a single line to Nora. Meet me at the Bayside Cafe at noon. No games. She replied instantly. I'll be there. At the cafe, Julian chose an outdoor table. The hum of Miami's lunchtime crowd a buffer against whatever came next. Nora arrived 5 minutes late, sliding into the chair across from him, her hands fidgeting. She started speaking before he could. I messed up, Julian. I was unhappy, but I never meant to hurt you. Her voice was soft, practiced, but her eyes darted to his phone on the table. He'd set it to record discreetly. You forged my name, he said, his tone even. You drained our savings and planned to run. She flinched, her hands gripping the table's edge. It wasn't like that. I was scared, trying to start over. Julian leaned forward, his voice low but cutting. You used my identity to steal. You lied to Chris, to me, to everyone. Nora's eyes widened, her breath catching. You talked to him? She whispered. Julian nodded. He said you told him we were over, that I was just a roommate. She looked away, her fingers twisting a napkin. I was confused, she said, her voice barely audible. I thought I could fix things later. Julian didn't blink. You fixed nothing. You built a trap. He slid the envelope across the table. I canceled your flight. The bank's investigating. You're done running. Nora stared at the envelope, her hands shaking. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice cracking. Julian stood, pocketing his phone. Nothing. I'm done being your safety net. He walked away, the cafe's noise fading behind him. His phone buzzed, another call from Nora. He let it ring, his steps lighter than they'd been in months. He wasn't free yet, but he was close. Marcus's office was his next stop, where the signed papers waited to sever Nora's hold on his life. The sun beat down on Miami's streets, but for the first time in days, Julian felt its warmth. Julian sat in Marcus's office, the signed separation papers stacked neatly on the desk. Marcus tapped a pen against his notepad, reviewing the fraud affidavit. The banks flagged Nora's transactions, he said, glancing up. They'll need her to explain the forged signature. You're clear of liability so far. Julian nodded, his focus sharp despite the sleepless night. He'd left the cafe an hour ago, Nora's pleas echoing in his mind, but not his heart. His phone, now on silent, had 32 unread messages from her. He didn't check them. "What's next?" he asked. Marcus slid a credit freeze form across the desk. "Sign this. It'll block her from opening anything else in your name." Julian signed, his hand steady. "In the apartment?" he asked. Marcus leaned back. "I'll draft a letter to the landlord today, removing you from the lease. You got a place to stay?" Julian nodded. "A sublet in Coconut Grove. Short term." Marcus jotted a note. "Good. Stay low. She might try to pull you back in with guilt." Julian's jaw tightened. He'd already felt the tug of her texts, but he wasn't falling for it. He left the office and headed to the sublet, a small studio with a single window facing a palm-lined street. He dropped his backpack and pulled out the envelope from Elaine, spreading the bank statements on the table. The numbers glared back. $12,000 siphoned. A flight canceled, a life dismantled. He opened his laptop and emailed the airline, requesting a record of Nora's booking history. A reply came within minutes. 3 other trips booked in the past year, all to resorts, all paid with their joint account. Each one stung, but the clarity fueled him. His phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown number. He played it, expecting Nora. Instead, it was Chris. "Hey man, it's me. I didn't know she was using you like that. She told me you were separated. I'm out of it now. Good luck." Julian deleted the message, his anger flaring not at Chris but at Nora's lies. He texted Elaine, "Thanks for the proof. I'm handling it." Her reply was immediate. "Be careful. She's desperate." Julian set the phone down and opened a browser, searching for Nora's gym. The website listed Chris as a trainer, his photo confirming the man from her texts. Julian closed the tab. He didn't need more faces to hate. At 3 p.m., he drove to the bank, armed with the fraud affidavit and Elaine's statements. The manager, a woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the documents. "We've frozen the secondary account," she said. "The transfers are under investigation. You'll need to file a police report for identity theft." Julian hesitated. A police report meant escalation, maybe Nora's arrest. He nodded. "I'll do it." She handed him a contact for the fraud department and a case number. He left, the weight of his decision settling in. Back at the sublet, he drafted the police report online, attaching the bank statements. Each click felt like a step toward a door he couldn't reopen. His phone lit up. Nora, texting again. "I'm at the apartment. Where are you? We need to talk face-to-face." Julian stared at the message, tempted to ignore it, but Marcus's advice echoed. Get her to admit something. He typed back. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Coral Gables Library. Public place." She agreed instantly, her eagerness unsettling. The next morning, Julian arrived early at the library, choosing a table near the entrance, his phone set to record discreetly. Nora walked in at 10:03, carrying a folder, her steps hesitant. She sat across from him, sliding the folder forward. "I brought the bank records," she said, her voice low. "I want to fix this." Julian didn't touch the folder. "You brought them to save yourself," he said, his tone even. "You drained our savings, forged my name, and planned to run." Nora's hands clenched. "I was trapped, Julian. I didn't know how to leave." He leaned forward, his voice steady. "You didn't want to leave. You wanted both lives, me as your backup, him as your thrill." Nora's eyes flickered with panic. "That's not true. I was unhappy. You stopped caring." Julian cut her off. "I cared. You stopped being honest." He tapped the folder. "You used my identity to steal. That's not unhappiness. That's a crime." Nora's breath hitched. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, her voice breaking. "Chris was a mistake. I'll pay it all back." Julian shook his head. "You told him we were done. You told your mother you'd frame me for debt." Nora's eyes widened, her hands trembling. "She told you," she whispered. Julian nodded. "And I have proof." He stood, pocketing his phone with the recording. "The bank's investigating. The police have your forged documents. You're out of moves." Nora grabbed his wrist, her grip desperate. "Please, Julian. I'll do anything." He pulled free, his voice cold. "You already did." He walked out, the library's quiet hum fading behind him. His phone buzzed. Marcus, confirming the landlord had received the lease termination. Julian was off the hook for the apartment. He drove to the police station, filing the report in person. The officer reviewed the documents, nodding. "We'll need to question her. You're pressing charges?" Julian exhaled, the weight of 11 years pressing against his resolve. "Yes," he said. The officer handed him a case file number. "We'll be in touch." Back at the sublet, Julian checked his email. The airline had sent Nora's full booking history, trips to Key West, Orlando, and Cancun, all paid with their money. He forwarded it to Marcus and the bank. His phone rang. Nora's mother again. "She knows you went to the police," Elaine said, her voice tense. "She's talking about leaving town tonight." Julian's pulse quickened. Her flight's canceled. She's got nowhere to go. Elaine paused. She's scared, Julian, but she brought this on herself. He thanked her and hung up, his mind already on the next step. He opened his laptop, drafting an email to his freelance clients, confirming upcoming projects. Work was his anchor now, a way to rebuild. He added one more task to his list: change locks on the sublet. Nora had no claim to this space, but he wasn't taking chances. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the studio's window. Julian felt the first stirrings of freedom, not from pain, but from her control. Tomorrow, he'd meet Marcus again to finalize the separation. Tonight, he'd sleep in a bed that was his alone. Julian woke in his Coconut Grove sublet, the morning sun filtering through the window. His phone showed no new messages from Nora, a first in days. He checked his email. Marcus had sent the finalized separation agreement, signed by both parties. Nora hadn't fought it. The police report was active, and the bank had escalated her fraud case. Julian exhaled, the tension in his chest easing slightly. He showered, packed his laptop, and headed to a community center where he'd volunteered before, needing purpose beyond the chaos. At the center, he helped set up for a local art workshop, guiding kids as they sketched. Their laughter grounded him, a reminder of life beyond betrayal. His phone buzzed mid-session. A text from Elaine: "Nora's at my place. She's talking to a lawyer." Julian typed back, "Thanks for the heads up." He didn't linger on it. Nora's moves no longer dictated his. After the workshop, he drove to Marcus's office to review the next steps. Marcus greeted him with a nod, sliding a folder across the desk. The police questioned Nora yesterday. She admitted to the forged account, but claimed it was a mistake. Julian flipped through the folder, a transcript of Nora's statement, confessing to opening the account but denying intent to harm. "She's minimizing," he said, his voice steady. Marcus nodded. "She'll face charges: identity theft, fraud. The bank's pushing for restitution." Julian closed the folder. "Will she go to jail?" Marcus shrugged. "Maybe probation, if she pleads out. You're clear, though. The debt's off your name." Julian leaned back, relief mixing with a quiet ache. He didn't want her destroyed, just accountable. He left the office and stopped at a mailbox, sending certified copies of the separation papers to Nora's lawyer. His phone rang as he walked to his car, an unknown number. He answered, cautious. "Julian, it's Chris." Julian's grip tightened. "What do you want?" Chris's voice was low, hesitant. "I heard about the police. I told them the truth. She said you were done. I didn't know about the money." Julian cut him off. "You knew enough." He hung up, his pulse steady. Chris's guilt wasn't his burden. Back at the sublet, Julian opened his laptop to find an email from the bank. $8,000 of the stolen funds had been recovered, frozen in Nora's secondary account. The rest was gone, spent on her trips. He forwarded the email to Marcus, adding a note: "Push for full restitution." His phone buzzed. A letter had arrived at the community center, forwarded from his old address. He drove to pick it up, finding a handwritten envelope, no return address. He opened it at a nearby park bench, the words in Nora's cursive unmistakable. "I've started therapy," it read. "Not to win you back, but to face what I did. I used your trust to escape myself. You gave me love I didn't earn. I hope you find someone who deserves you." No signature, just a folded photo of them at their engagement party, smiling, unaware of the cracks to come. Julian tucked the letter into his pocket, the photo too. He didn't need her remorse, but it was a marker, a line between who he was and who he'd become. He spent the afternoon at a coffee shop, pitching new freelance clients. 2 responded, offering contracts for branding projects. He accepted both, his dream of a design studio taking shape. Later, he called his sister, Mia, who'd been checking in daily. "You sound stronger," she said. Julian smiled faintly. Getting there. He didn't tell her about the letter. It wasn't about closure. It was about moving forward. Days later, Marcus called with an update. Nora had pleaded guilty to lesser charges, agreeing to probation and restitution. She'd sold her car to cover half the stolen funds. Julian didn't celebrate. It wasn't victory, just justice. He donated a share of the recovered money to the community center, funding art supplies for the kids. The act felt like shedding a weight he hadn't named. That evening, he walked along the Miami waterfront, the ocean's rhythm steadying his own. His phone stayed quiet. No calls, no texts, no ghosts. Weeks passed. Julian moved into a permanent apartment, a small place with a balcony overlooking a quiet street. He hung his niece's birthday card on the fridge, a reminder of family who'd never doubted him. His freelance work grew, clients praising his designs. He joined a local running group, their morning jogs through Coral Gables filling his lungs with purpose. One evening, a client invited him to a gallery opening. He went, sketching ideas in a notebook, surrounded by strangers who didn't know his past. A final email from Marcus arrived. Nora had relocated to Tampa, starting over under court supervision. She'd left a letter with her lawyer, asking it be forwarded. Julian didn't open it. He mailed it back, marked return to sender. He didn't need her words to define him. His life was his now: work, community, small joys reclaimed. As he locked his apartment door that night, he paused, feeling the weight of his keys. They weren't tied to anyone else's choices. He stepped onto the balcony, the Miami skyline glowing in the distance. For the first time in years, he wasn't running from anything. He was building.